Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of my Lightroom Classic course. I'm happy to see you back here again. We're going to get right into it, and today we are talking about color calibration and lens corrections. So in part 1, we talked about the basic module. We got a great foundation to begin editing on. So I'm going to bring down and hide this tab and move down to calibration. I do calibration second because before I start worrying about tonal curves, HSL, and color grading, I want to make sure that my colors and my color scheme is accurate to what I want my final product to look like. If you're having wonky colors straight out of camera and you've already adjusted your color profile and you're still having issues, it's a good idea to come down to the calibration panel and start taking a look at these. Now, my image is exposed properly and the colors look great, so I actually use calibration also to create a color scheme within my photo that matches my vision for the image that I'm working on. So going into this, we have options for adjusting our shadow tints, our primary colors, and the hue and saturation for each of the primary colors. Generally, I'm really only messing with my blue and red primary colors. I don't mess with my shadows too much, if at all. And I really don't mess with my green too much unless I'm just having way too much magenta from possibly one of my cheaper lenses. I'm sure you've experienced this if you have a nifty 50 or something that just pulls way too much magenta. The Canon EOS, the mirrorless series, seems to have some issues for me with the magentas, but this image is looking great. So I'm gonna move right into adjusting my blue and red primary sliders to get this picture to a color scheme that I'm happy with. So starting with the blue slider, I'm gonna bring the hue down and just kind of look at how it looks like when I bring it to each of its extreme. And now I'm gonna bring it up, and I'm really liking how it looked towards the bottom line. When we're messing with these calibration sliders, everything is done very minimally. You do not want to go and pull this all the way down to here. Perhaps if you're shooting something creative or a product or something, that might be a time that you would create something extreme like this, but in any other application, this is just unusable. But I really liked how it looked when it was maybe towards 20, and you can see the before and after. It's very minor, but we brought some more orange into her skin tones, and that was a little bit more true to life, whereas this one was just a little bit gray, a little bit yellow and jaundicey, which is the bane of my existence. Don't have jaundicey skin tones. They don't look great, and I did it probably for my first year of editing until I found out about calibration and punching just a little bit of orange into those skin tones. So we've got our blue primary set for its hue, and we're going to adjust the saturation to where I think that it matches my style. And I like punching in just maybe about 10%. You can almost not tell the difference, but once everything's said and done, it's really going to cause this image to pop. And I do like the way it corrected her skin tones from being too gray. Now, working on our red primary, I'm going to do the exact same thing. You'll notice throughout these tutorials that I usually like to bring down the extreme so I can get a gauge on what of the image it's adjusting, and then I'll bring the positive extreme into it and see where I like it. In this case, just looking at it, I'm thinking that I do like it just about where it's at, possibly bringing up my red primary slider to introduce a little bit more orange, just a tad, and then with my saturation, also bringing that up just a smidge. You guys, this is all a recipe. It is just like cooking in the kitchen. We're not going to dump the whole salt shaker in. None of your values should be very extreme outside of possibly bringing down your highlights quite a bit. and possibly a few other things, but everything should be pretty minor. So now if we look at the before and the after, we've done just a very minor adjustment, but it's made a major difference in the grand scheme of our overall image. So that's the calibration. As I mentioned, the shadows and the green primary slider I'm not going to mess with. I like the way this looks. I could introduce a little bit of magenta into my image, but I don't really want to overdo this. I love the caramel complexion the way it is, and I think I'm going to leave it right there. I could add just a little bit of saturation here, maybe a value of 3. I think I'm just going to leave it. I don't want to spend too much time on it because when you start pixel peeping, man, it can really become a toxic relationship. We're going to close out calibration and talk about the last module for this part of the tutorial, and we're going to look at lens corrections. You can do this interchangeably before calibration. This is just my workflow, but lens corrections are just how they sound. Sometimes your lens will introduce a little bit of beveling or like fisheye aspect ratio issues. So we can enable the profile corrections, and you'll notice that it kind of flattened out the image where it was a little bit bubbly. And then also removing chromatic aberration. Some lenses, specifically the mid-range and beginner introductory, more cost-effective lenses, they'll have some issues with chromatic aberration where sometimes purple will get introduced or green, and I'll just check this on out of habit. Normally it doesn't do much because I have made a point of being better at shooting properly in camera to start, but you may notice that there's some issues. If for some reason your lens doesn't pop up and you know that it is a popular lens or a brand name lens like Nikon, Sony, Canon, Tamron, or any of those, all you have to do is select on the make. You've got all of these options. I mean, they've got lenses I've never even heard of on here, but you can select the lens profile and then the model and the profile. Here you can manually adjust the distortion. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Sometimes there is lens distortion and lens vignetting. The automatic profile correction check should fix those as well, but if you do have some extra vignetting, you can adjust that as well. There's an option here to select manual instead of profile if your lens isn't showing up, or enabling these lens corrections just doesn't do what you think that it should do. You can move into manual and adjust your fringing. We're not going to be talking about that much today, because as long as you're shooting right in camera and you're using a lens from the past 20 to 30 years, just selecting lens profile should take care of the majority of your issues. And that's just about it for this tutorial. I'm trying to keep these short for you guys so that you can hit them one at a time, maybe one a day or one on your lunch break. But I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. In the next tutorial, we are going to be talking about tonal curves, and I'm excited to see you there.